Pride. In or out? That is the question. And no, I'm not talking about your belly button. You really must stop showing people that. We've talked about this. No, I am, of course, talking about Europe! Don't fall asleep. And really don't fall asleep, because this is one of the most important things our generation's ever going to deal with. And I'm slightly weirded out by just sort of how indifferent so many people are. A bit kind of, eh. Now, what do you think is the single biggest idea in the mind of your average British person that makes them British? What is the thing they feel most pride about? Well, there's lots of Victorian heritage around us and the evidence of empire, which makes some of us liberals squirm, but is nonetheless rather impressive. But really, I think it's one thing. It's the Second World War. That Union flag might have all kinds of slightly contentious history attached to it with the empire, but we most often picture it draped over trestle tables in church halls during the war, when the only way to describe your average person in Britain in their collective effort was bally hero. Ordinary folk got together and did their bit in all kinds of courageous and selfless and frankly unfussy ways. And the stories of refugees coming to the UK and finding fairness and justice and compassion are many and legend. I think with some justifiability, many British people look back at the Second World War and think that defines us as a nation and makes them rather proud. So why would we hand all that over to some faceless bureaucrats in Europe who we never really got on with anyway and who we didn't vote for and who want to make all our bananas straight? Thing is, times have changed since the EEC was formed and we joined it in 1975. But, well, first of all, it was British lawyers who helped to draft that at the time. And the idea that those who want to get out say that we don't need local trade agreements anymore because geography's changed since the digital revolution and markets are, well, everywhere. You know, they have a point with that argument, but it's fundamentally missing something human. Your neighbourhood. You might see yourself as a fascinating digital native who wants to jack in, as I believe the kids would put it, and stay online, you know, frankly, all the time, and never have to go outside and see the sun because you're pale and interesting and in no way need vitamin D. And yet, at some point, you are going to have to put out the bins. And you know, even if your bin was a bot and can put itself out, at some point your fence would fall down and you'd need to talk to your neighbours. Or they'd come round and ask for something. The point is, you can't avoid your geography, not really. And if there's one thing that's come out of the digital revolution fast, it's something very human. If you imagine that the Second World War was actually the end of empire for all of Europe, and the 20th century was a time of questioning all the fundamentals of our identity, what we were, who we were made to be, told to be, had to be. We sort of disconnected from all those grand ideas, tried new ones, they didn't work, so we all sort of went shopping and wanted that to be as easy as possible. So trade deals and all the rest of it. And yet one thing came out of the new connectivity we had, the sense that we're being disconnected. That actually all these extra ways to talk to each other made us feel further apart. So what's happened? People have physically got closer together. Hack days. What an irony that is. People getting together in a room to come up with digital solutions, or LAN parties where you beat the whole point of having the internet and make your area local and move your PC into a room to have a party because it's more human. I met half the people I know in Southbourne in Bournemouth because we were talking about Southbourne, the geographical area, on Twitter. And now we're kind of physical friends and we take some pride in where we live. Your neighbourhood matters. And so my question is this. As British people, how are we being good neighbours? And what would it say to our neighbours to leave? Because I think the point is clear that There may be all sorts of questions and hard to find facts about what everybody really spends being part of the EU, but there's a principle there, isn't there? That of course we give in more than we take out because it's a fraternity. Half the cities in Britain that have been regenerated beautiful, like Sheffield, which I've been to recently, it's paid for with European money. Europe bails us out of all kinds of things because we all pay into this kind of membership. That's fair, so that when one of us needs something, the others are there. Now I know Europe, as it stands as a project, is pretty imperfect. The idea of a federal Europe just, I don't think, will work apart from anything else. We don't want that imposed. Tell me a European who does, really. The euro as a currency is jolly handy when you're swanning around Europe, but it's kind of failing as an idea. Greece is knackered because it couldn't decouple from the currency. And the idea of bureaucrats kind of letting in far too many states a bit too quickly, for maybe good reasons, but just getting caught up the way bureaucrats do and politicians do, Europe might be too big already. And there is shame over Europe, let us not forget, because of the refugee crisis and the way that politicians have pandered in a panic to more conservative wings of their thinking and of our fears. And now doing deals with the dodgiest soon-to-be member state of Turkey, which has the least humanitarian government in its modern history at the moment. There is a lot to change about Europe. But does that mean we lead by leaving? I think British people can be proud of the fact that their flag represents resiliently, positively, despite its history, a natural integration. If you're British, you are mixed up. Are we from the UK or Great Britain or England or Northern Ireland or Wales or Scotland? Well, all of those things. I'm British because I'm technically half Welsh, half English. And if you check your blood as a European British person, a white British person, you'll find Danish blood, French blood, Italian blood, German blood, all kinds of other blood in there before you've even started. And if, say, you are one of any number of different types of British person now, say you're a British Pakistani Muslim, that's a mouthful, isn't it? But you can decide to what emphasis in which direction you are all of those things, but you are all of those things. And we're used to the idea. This is a country that takes pride in fairness and equality. And despite the fact that we behave in a really conservative way, we are above all a liberal country. We want freedom. We want to be rude to the authorities and stick it to them. And we want to be ourselves. Well, I think Europe is founded on a culture of exactly that. And there's one principal reason that I think it's a no-brainer to stay in. Peace. There's a reason why we've had an unprecedented level of peace in Europe for 2-3 generations. It's because we're built together. It's because the leaders after the war were so desperate to rebuild after the horrors and fears of 2 wars that were really bookends of the same thing, that allowed fascism itself to grow up in the middle out of our darkest conservative fears, those in Germany. They wanted to put a stop to it and build in a need for each other. And they did. And it worked. I think Britain is a world leader in a sense of natural cultural integration. To leave Europe would simply be to lead backwards. That's not something I take pride in. It's got to be in. We've got to work as a family. We've got to be neighbours. We've got to say yes to the future. Because Europe is leading the way. We've got to help lead it and take our prideful place at the blooming table. It's in.